So I thought we could just get started by you telling us a little bit about your background, your family and what you did before you became a legislator, what you like to do.
Sure. So I am married to a teacher. I have three daughters. They are age almost 22, almost 20, and 17. So we have a busy household. One just graduated from college at the University of Michigan. Another is a student at the University of Michigan. And our youngest is going to be a senior next year in high school. We've got a lot of good reasons to see women in office and making a difference in our lives, but also theirs as they start adulthood. Before I joined the legislature, I worked in nonprofits and in education for the better part of 2 decades. I was a caseworker. I was a paraprofessional in a local public school, and I did things like art therapy, and I was the executive director of a community-based corrections organization for several years. And you throw in some part-time work and some full-time parenting in there, and that pretty much rounds out my experience prior to the legislature.
And you have been there 6 years. What do you hear now from your constituents? What are they saying to you? What are their priorities?
So a lot of priorities that have continued throughout the time I've been there involve education and economic opportunity, which are, of course, linked together. Additionally, there's roads and infrastructure. We saw the failures that resulted in, lead poisoning of a city of Flint. It really was a failure of leadership and investment in infrastructure, and people here in Grand Rapids understand that. In my district, the veterans home, there are 2 veterans homes that are state-run in the state of Michigan, and one of them is located in my state house district. And it has a very troubled history of privatization of the direct care services, which resulted in very, very poor care for several years. And I was a very vocal voice against that. And toward fixing the problems over there. And I had to really make a lot of noise for 3 or 4 years before I was listened to.
Well, and now you are running for the state Senate. And can you tell us a little bit about your opponent and how you would draw the differences between the two of you?
Sure. My opponent is kind of a tried and true Republican. He's somebody who's a reliable vote for what I would call the failed policies of the last 8 years. Our roads are in the worst condition of any state in the Midwest. Our schools are consistently ranking in the bottom 10, whereas we used to rank much higher. We used to be among the best in the nation. We've had issues of water contamination and health issues related to that have made national and even world headlines under the Republican control of the legislature and the governor's office. We've had integrity issues. We've got a debacle with the unemployment agency in our state that defrauded, tens of thousands of people, and still hardly any accountability for any of those things. I would say my opponent would be a continuation of those kinds of policies that really don't put people first. Not only those big picture issues, but specifically, he's opposed to the legalization of marijuana, which will most likely be on our ballot if the legislature does not take that up this week. I think, he's one of those people who seems to think that the Republicans in the legislature know better than the people do themselves about what they would like to see happen in our state. So that's an interesting angle for him. In addition, he's anti-choice. He just doesn't believe that women have the ability or right to control their own fertility or to decide when, if, where, and under what circumstances or how many children they should have or start a family. So I'm in a unique position because I've really had 6 years of opportunity to see how not to do things in the legislature. And so I'm eager to get there into the Senate and to be able to exercise some real long-term leadership. Things like education funding. We've been chronically underfunding and pursuing all of these quote unquote reforms, mostly led by Betsy DeVos. And they've been failing us, and they seem to be willing to just stick to those for philosophical reasons at all costs. And so it's really time for that to change. And I think I'm in a good position. I've got a reputation as somebody who can work across the aisle, somebody who is concerned about long-term implications of things, not just short-term payoffs or political dividends.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for tuning in and watching this. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.